Again with Lawrence County Tech Tips. I would like to, now that we've gone over Google Drive, go over something really cool you can do within it called Google Forms. So with Google Forms, you can create student or parent surveys, class quizzes, worksheets. It's a pretty cool thing, and I'd like to show it to you today. So the first thing we're going to do is go to Google, get signed into our Drive. It comes up, like I said before, you see all your stuff in Drive. And if we wanted to create a new form within our classroom, a certain class that we have, we can go to Classroom within our Drive and then pick out the classroom we want to work in. So I'm going to be working in Google Training for today. So I'm going to double click that. You can see I've got a couple of things in here already, but I want to create a new form in here. So I'm going to say New. Where's Form? Oh, it's under More. I'm going to click Google Forms. It asks me about creating that in a shared folder. And the reason this is a shared folder is because it's a classroom, so it has to be shared with my students. So of course I want to do that. So I'm going to say OK. So you can see it says try the new Google Forms. Since they'll probably be moving to this in the next couple of weeks and not give you this old option of Google Forms, I'm just going to go ahead and say try the new Google Forms for this training. So I'll click that. Now if I wanted to go back and get something from the old Google Forms, I could click the running man over here and go back to the old Google Forms. But now I'm going to try the new Google Forms. Okay? So the first thing that comes up is a template for you. It's untitled form. So I want to give it a name. So let's say PD training. So it kind of has a glitch here where it does the naming of the file. This is the name of the survey as it's presented to people, but this is the name of the file up here in the corner. Now, I don't want that to be just G because that's all it captured. I'm going to go ahead and say PD survey. So the name of the file can be different than the actual survey. So see, when I look at my Google Drive, it's going to be PD survey. But then when I'm inside of it, it's PD training. That's what the people will see. So I can give a description. Survey to assess knowledge. Okay, so that's just a description of it. So now that we have the survey started, let's go over at least one of the buttons up top. You see the little painter's palette? So if we click on that color palette, you can change the theme of your survey. So if I click that and I can change the colors, you see, and it automatically changes the background for me when it changes colors. Now I can also click on this image icon, and it has some pre-built images ready for me. Sports and games. Let's see. Let's see, travel. Oh, here's where I would like to be and get out of that snow. Let's say select. And it will add that and change the background for me to go along with it. So you can do that with the color palette. From there, you can also upload photos from your computer or your albums within Google Drive. And you could drag one from your desktop or from your photos into here. Now the thing is, it has to be 800 by 200 in resolution. So remember that when you're having problems trying to do that. So really for me, in this purpose, it's easier to just go in and grab it from what's pre-made for us. So I'm going to cancel. I'm going to go back to just a color. So there we go. That is the color palette. This is the preview icon. If you click that, that's what it looks like for people that are taking the survey. You can always jump in between the survey that you're editing, and that you can either click the pencil to start editing again, or because it always opens a new tab, one of the kind of an issue I have with it, it opens a new tab every time you click preview, and then it doesn't close it when you go back to edit. I always just close the tab because I already have the edit one open. The other icon is settings. If you click that, you see who can respond. That's up to you. You can say anyone. That means anyone in the public can respond and doesn't have to collect their name or anything. Or you can say anyone in Lawrence County Schools. Now that would mean that they have to log in order to access the form. Now I do believe that if you do anyone in Lawrence County Schools, it doesn't collect their name unless you say automatically collect the respondent's Lawrence County Schools username. So we would check that box if we want that collected. Now we can also allow them to only submit one time, so that can come in really handy at times. And when they're done with it, once they submit, this is where it says show respondents a link to, so they can click on submit another response, or they can click to edit their responses, or they can see a summary if you allow that. Now down at the bottom you have some presentation options, show progress bar, and shuffle question order. Now if you had a really long survey, you might want to show the progress bar so they can see how far along they are. And shuffle question order, I probably wouldn't use that. You could for a quiz or something like that, but if you want to go in later and use things like Flubaroo for automatic grading, you shouldn't shuffle the question order because your answer key will be out of whack if the questions are changing order. So I don't suggest doing shuffle question order. One thing to keep in mind when you're looking at your settings page, if you are planning on using Flubaroo with your survey or as a quiz, however you're going to do this, use this forms for, and most of the time I use it for like a quiz or a worksheet. So one of the things I like to do is check automatically collect respondents Lawrence County Schools username. So what that does, it automatically pulls their email address. So it's their first.last@stu.lawrence.kyschools.us, and it automatically collects that for you. So when you go in and do your answer key, it asks how to submit the answers back to the student, because you can have Flubaroo email the students their grades. So if you wanted to do that or have a contact information, you automatically collect it. It's already in there for you. You don't have to enter the information to the quiz and you're good to go. So I do suggest doing that if you're planning on using Flubaroo or doing grading on these sheets. For this purpose, we don't need it. You have the send. So you can send the form to someone, you can email it to them, you can make an attachment, you can do a hyperlink or an embed code, you can share it on Google+, Facebook, or Twitter, and you can add collaborators, people that can work on it with you. Like I said, there's your automatically collect students' response. It's another way to get to that. And then you have this button, the More button, where you can make a copy of it. You can move it to the trash or get a pre-filled link. Things. And you can also take a tour at any time of how to use Google Forms, which could come in handy for you. So anyway, now that we've got the top of it out of the way, let's go to questions. So it automatically gives you one untitled question. Now the first things I like to do, I make the first question last name, and I make this a text question, short answer, because this doesn't necessarily have to be too long. Hopefully their name's not too long. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this, because the next question is going to be the same type of question for me, but I'm going to make it first name. Now the reason that I do last name and first name in all of my surveys or quizzes, especially quizzes for students, not necessarily surveys, I always like to have last name and first name in my questionnaire or my quiz, survey, whatever you're doing with this product. I do that because once I collect all the responses inside of a spreadsheet, I can filter the results by last name. So that gives me an easy way to filter all my students in my class. And the best way for me is by last name. Now, I also forgot to make these a required question, so just slide the slider. Now that's a required question on this survey or form. Now I want to add another question. So first let's add a title. Let's consider this a section or where it starts. So the first thing we started our PD with was Google Chrome. So I'm going to do Google Chrome for the title here. And this is to assess your knowledge of Google Chrome. I'll add a question. In the first question, I want to say, how comfortable are you using Google Chrome? So you can see I have multiple choice, checkboxes, drop down, linear scale, short answer, paragraph, but for this I'm going to do linear scale. So I have 1 through 5. I can label 1 and 5 like least and most, or I could go here to the hint text at the more button and say hint text and say 1 being least comfortable, and 5 being most comfortable. I'm going to make that a required question. Now let's go see what that looks like. As a student or parent taking this, using this form, this is what they would see. PD training, it asks for their last name, first name. You can see that's a required question because of the stars beside the question. And then we have this section is titled Google Chrome. Assess your Google Chrome. And then how comfortable are you using Google Chrome? I need to change this description a little bit, so I'm going to close this and go back and edit this. We need to put knowledge right there. So that's all there was to edit that. And now if we look at it again, there's my changes. Looks better. So we'll add another question since this is looking good. Let's say, do you know how to add extensions to Chrome? And from this, I'm going to do a drop down because it's yes or no. Now, it has number 3 here, but number 3 will not show up until I click on it. I could say other, or give it another option besides yes and no. But I don't want that, I just want the 2. So that's all that's going to show up. I'm going to make it a required question. So now if I preview it again, so here's my choices, and here's that drop down, yes or no. And I could submit if I was done. But I'm not going to. I'm going to go back and add some more things to it. So we'll add another question. Say, can apps be added to Google Chrome? Let's change that and make it apps can be added. And we're going to make that, we'll say multiple choice, and we'll say true or false. Okay. And make it a required question. And let's preview it. So there's what our form looks like so far. So I'm going to close this box tab, and I want a new section because we've covered Google Chrome. The next thing we covered was Google Drive. So I'm going to say add title and say, well, I tell you what, let's move that to the trash and do the section. And here on this section, we'll title it Google Drive. And assess knowledge of Google Drive. Okay, so we're starting with a new section, and I want to have a similar question, like how comfortable are you using Google Drive? But I don't want to retype that question, so I'm going to go highlight it. You can see where the blue line is. That's the question that you're looking at. So I'm going to duplicate that question. I'm going to grab it here and drag it all the way down into my section that I'm working with. Now I'm going to just change this to Drive. And now let's preview it. So, my last name, first name, here's your Google Chrome section. And these are required questions, so I can't move on until I've filled out all the required questions. So I can say next. And then it starts with Google Drive. Now, if I hadn't answered all the questions, like if I'd left out my first name, it won't let me. If I say next, it says this is a required question, give your answer. So then I say next, and I'm allowed to move on through the form. A lot of other buttons over here that I would like to show you. First is how to add a picture to a form. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to click the picture icon. You see I can choose an image to upload, or if I had something on my desktop or in a folder that I could see, I could just drag it in. I could bring it from my Google Drive or anywhere like that. But I have something in my documents, so I'm going to say drag it up in there. So now we should see the picture that I had taken. It's a screenshot of my desktop. I could give the image a title if I wanted to. Really don't have to. It's just a placeholder. And now I'm going to add a question to go along with that image. Well, I guess I should give it a title. Just a question. Now, for the question, let's make a question image so it's not confusing. Now, for the question, I'm going to say, what would you click to get to Google Forms? From your OneDrive. What would you click to get to Google Forms from your drive? So we can make that multiple choice or checkbox drop down. Or we could make it a short answer. So I think I'll just do short answer so they can just fill in what their answer is. So there, let's see what that looks like. I'm going to have to go back through all these questions as a preview. Just really quickly. You can see I've added some. Have to do them all if you make them required. So you can see my image. Now it says, what would you click to get to Google Forms from your drive? And then they would give their answer. So that's what it looks like so far. The other thing we have is add a video. So if I click add video, I'll grab the URL from one that I did earlier and say select. If you click the share button in a YouTube video, it'll give you the URL for it, so you can copy and paste that into other things. And that shows a little bit of the analytics that go along with Google Forms. And so that's how you add a video. If I do a preview again, and here's the video. I'll click on it and play it. So now you see the video will begin. For video, we showed you how to create a quiz with Google Forms. Now I'd like to show you some. So cool. There's it, adding a video to your Google Forms. So now that we know how to create a form, let's look at some of the built-in things that are pretty awesome within Google Forms, like analyzing data. Wouldn't it be great as a teacher I could give a pop quiz in the middle of the week and see what part of the lesson students weren't catching in my class? Like, you know, if 15% of the kids miss it, that's probably about right in a classroom. But let's say 80% of the kids miss a lesson that I'm trying to get across to them. I need to go back and reteach that, or teach it a different way if the majority of the class is missing that problem. So one way to tell if they got it or not would be to build them a quiz or a form in Google Forms and give that to them, so I can go back and look at a survey that I did before. So I have this Google Classroom training survey that I did a while back. So I'm going to open that, and if I click responses, where I say, do you know how to sign into your Google Classroom? 100% of the people got that. So if I scroll down, and I say, do you know how to add resources in the About section of Google Classroom? I can see 17.5% of the people, or 14 out of 80, didn't know how to do that. So, you know, I may need to get with those 14 people and figure that out with them. Same on this question. And see, on a scale of 1 to 5, indicate how comfortable you are with Google Classroom. So 38 people were pretty comfortable with it. 14 were in the middle, 3 were bad, and 27 were great with it. So and then I asked for some responses if they were uncomfortable, and here's where I can read those responses. So that is built into Google Forms, and that's a really handy thing to look at where my class stands on a lesson that I'm trying to get across to them. So the other thing I can do when I'm looking at Google Forms, besides analytics and responses, I can get a spreadsheet of that data. So if I click this View Responses and Sheets, it'll bring up the spreadsheet that goes along with all that data. So I can have all that at my fingertips, and if I put like the first name and last name, I would be able to go to that part of the spreadsheet and do a sort. So I can sort sheet by that username. See, now I have A to Z that way. Or if I wanted it opposite, I could do Z to A. Of course, I like A to Z. So that's why I would put first name and last name as part of my questions on a quiz. Now, the first time that you do a survey or a form, it won't create the sheet for you. So you can see the one that we've created today. If I go to responses, it should ask me to create a sheet when I click on the sheets. So see how it looks a little different there? It says create spreadsheet. Now this one says view responses and sheets. That's because I already created it. So now if I go here, click on that, it's going to create a new spreadsheet. So it goes ahead and titles it for me, and it'll always have responses at the end of the title. So I say create, it'll create that within the same folder that the form is created. Now, if I click on it, the only reason it doesn't show it, well, it's going to show it, but it's not going to have any responses. Okay, so then once people start filling it out, it'll give me the responses. The other thing we have in here, if I click the More button, I can change the response destination, or I could unlink the form, or I could download this as a CSV and I could import that into something like Excel, or I could also possibly import it into my student information system, for instance, at Infinite Campus, or I can delete all the responses and start over again. So that's pretty cool stuff for it. And I can turn off accepting responses. So if I do that, no one will be able to click submit. Turn it off and turn it on. Okay. So that's the other things that are included with Google Forms, and I think you'll find them handy in your classroom.